Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs. I'm your host, Raquel Okyay, and my special guest today is Dan Debono. Dan is running for U.S. Congress in District 3, that's Long Island, New York. I'm really excited about your campaign, your race. You're a good conservative. You've been talking the good points that I like, that I follow. You and I had a conversation on the radio last Friday. I know that you're very pro 2A, which makes you a very welcome guest to my show, so I'm very excited to have you on.
Raquel, thanks. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Excellent. So what I wanted you to do is give the viewers a chance to know a little bit about your background. What do you do for a living, and how did you come to the place where you wanted to serve as an elected official?
So I was born in Syosset, which is right in the center of the district on Long Island, and I've lived my entire life in Northport, which is about 40 miles from New York City on the North Shore of Long Island, for those who aren't familiar with it. And
very nice place. It's a very nice part of Long Island, actually.
It is. It's green. It's green, and it's relatively spacious. So it's a nice place to raise a family. It's a nice place to grow up. And my family is public servants. My parents were teachers in New York City public schools. My grandparents one was a police officer, one was an Army soldier in World War I. And my dad also served during the Korean War. And
that's nice.
A lot of family members were police officers, cousins, aunts, uncles. And my sister's a nurse, other sister's a teacher. So the family's
nice
it's a public service family. It's just something
that.
And my brothers and I also were all in the military, and all three of us served during Gulf War I in Bosnia in the early 90s.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. I was very happy to do it, and but we all served during the early 90s, and I had an ROTC scholarship to Holy Cross College in Worcester, Massachusetts, and as part of that, I agreed to serve in the Navy. And when I was a senior in college, a friend of mine was killed in action in Panama. He was a Navy SEAL from a neighboring school that shared the ROTC unit with my school, and I had become very close with him. And John Connors was his name. He was killed in December 1989 in Panama, and that inspired me to join the SEALs. So I applied that month, and I got into the program. And in the week after I graduated college in 1990, I went out to San Diego to SEAL training. And I started.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. It was, he was a willing soldier, and we miss him dearly. But that's the sacrifice that soldiers make. Yeah. So went out to San Diego, started with a class of 100 men in my SEAL training class, and we ended up graduating 22 after 6 months. So 78 of them quit. And for 6 months, you have these very hardened professional warriors trying to root out those who were weak, those who were not committed to the program, and those who were there for the wrong reasons. So it was a fantastic experience. You learned teamwork, you learned the concept of never ever giving up, and you learned the importance of the will to succeed. And that the most important force in the world is the human spirit. And if you commit yourself to something, there's nothing that can stop you. Provided it's within the laws of physics. Yeah. So after that, I came back, went to the University of Chicago's Graduate School of Business for my master's in business. Then I spent 20 years working in finance.
Okay.
And towards
on
the
Long Island or in the city?
In the city. Yeah. And towards the end of that, I moved out to California actually in 2012 for a couple of years to take care of one of my kids got sick, and I decided to take a step back from the working world. And I spent a couple of years with my family, coaching my kids in soccer and baseball. And my son healed, thank God, he got better. And we moved back to New York. And then I realized that Long Island was very challenged, and I wanted to get involved. What's happening here is, while the national economy is great, locally, we're losing a lot of young people. They're all moving to Florida and Tennessee and the Carolinas and Texas because they can't find good jobs here. So it really made me sad.
And also the high taxes, Dan.
Yeah, and that's the story. Taxes are high, and they're very difficult to change because you have to change them at the state level. You have to go through the New York State Assembly, New York State Senate, the governor, and all the school districts. So taxes they're going to be tough to change on a local level, and Long Island's taxes are among the worst in the country. Yeah. Now, historically, that's been okay because the job opportunities were plentiful. There was tons of high-paying jobs in Manhattan, tons of high-paying jobs in Nassau County and Suffolk. But over the years, a lot of those opportunities, a lot of those high-paying jobs have disappeared. So what we're left with is this high-taxed area and not so many great job opportunities. And I think a lot of it has to do with poor leadership and poor regulation. So that's why I decided to get involved. I love this area. I wanted to thrive, and I was tired of seeing friends, acquaintances, family members move away in search of greener pastures because they couldn't afford to live there.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. That's outstanding. That's an outstanding background. And again, I just want to thank you for your service. I have my family is also military. My oldest brother served in the Air Force. And then I have my mom is from Puerto Rico, and her family served under the American flag for many years. Like 5 of my uncles, like a dozen of my cousins, a lot of them are Marines. So we have a very, I come from a family very pro-America. So I kind of, I kind of get where you're coming from. And also there's that feeling that you can do whatever you want, whatever's, physically capable of you. That is the American dream. If you want the American dream, you have to go get it. You have to go get it. And I I'd love to see the opportunity there, because when you open up the opportunity for people, they really do excel. They want to excel, right? So when the opportunity is not there, it makes it very difficult for working class families.
Yes, it really does. And unfortunately, people are struggling here.
Yeah, I know it too. My brother lives out there in that area too. One of my brothers. So I want to get into the particular district that you're running for, which is New York 3 for Congress. We talked a little bit about this on Friday. I want to go over it again. I want you to talk a little bit about your opponent. He's a career politician, that I know. And also he's sort of, and I remember this from being in New York and following politics. He's kind of like he's a Democrat that, pretends to be like a moderate, or, sometimes he may have even called himself a conservative, and he tries to bring in, both sides. In other words, he speaks from both sides of his mouth to pull in everybody, instead of just being honest. You know how you pull people in? You're honest with them and your philosophy, and you just try, and I don't have to tell you, but you try to persuade them of your philosophy, and that's that's a successful politician. Politics is the art of communication. So not putting forth the truth is my problem with your opponent, okay? It's because he's two-faced. So on one side, if he's talking to people, that he's telling them what he thinks they want to hear. Yeah. More recently, in the past couple of years, I've seen him as a politician go from one extreme to another, and he's going to the left-wing extreme, where they're really a small minority. Now, they might be very loud in the media. They might be very loud, that left-leaning, liberal, very liberal side, but they're such a small minority. And I hope that you can give a conservative voice in Congress, and knock him out.
I hope so too. Me too. Well, everything you said, Raquel.
What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong with his district while he's been in charge?
Everything you said is true. He's a career politician. He's been in and out of office. Well, he's been in office for 18 years. He's been a politician since, over the last almost 30 years. And he, as you said, his goal is to stay in power. And for him, being a politician is just about having the prestige and the power that comes with some positions. He has no bedrock principles that I think he'd be willing to go to the mat on, or to fight to the death on. He seems to flip-flop. He's the type of guy who changes his views based upon what he thinks, which way he thinks the winds are blowing. I'll give you 3 examples, such as you cited. This is a man who's claimed to be pro-life, but then has a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood. He's not pro-life. He's pro-abortion. And sadly, he's tricked some people into thinking that he's, in fact, pro-life. Look, a lot of people in this country are pro-abortion. He should simply state his position instead of misleading his constituents. Right. The second thing has to do with being pro-business and pro-development on Long Island. He runs around trying to set up these business meetings and talks about bringing business to Long Island. But the biggest factor deterring business from coming to Long Island, and the biggest cause of businesses leaving Long Island are high taxes. And when this guy was in charge of the county in Long Island here, it's called Nassau County, he put in place a 23% tax hike. And he had a job before that as mayor of a local city called Glen Cove. When he was there, he put in place a 29% tax hike. So he's not friendly to business. He's not friendly to families. He's somebody who kowtows to special interests, and he tries to jam it on the poor and the middle class. And the third thing in which he's extremely disingenuous on is on the Second Amendment. He claims to be pro-Second Amendment, and yet he's aligned himself with this March for Our Lives group who wants to take away our Second Amendment rights. There's no doubt in my mind that that's what they're seeking to do. You know, they use euphemisms, they talk in ambiguous terms, but at the end of the day, they're seeking to remove Second Amendment rights from law-abiding Americans, and that's not a position that I agree with.
Yeah, neither do I. It's really frightening because they talk a lot, you know, Democrats, liberal Democrats, they talk a lot about the First Amendment and freedom of speech and how it's so important, and or they might talk about other amendments. So you can't pick and choose what amendments you like or not. You know, they're there for a reason. The Constitution is there for a reason. So if you love the Constitution, then you're going to have to follow the rules. And I mean, the Second Amendment is so dear to our hearts, Americans. And it's a lot of people come on my show and we discuss these topics. It's so broad. You know, we could really get into so many different things. But I think the one thing that keeps standing out for me is that all of my guests say the same thing about the idea that it is just the freedom to protect yourself, you know, in any means you want. So, you know, a weapon can be a lot of different things. You know, it could be a chair, it could be a lot of different things. But the choice that you have, the choice of weapons to choose that you want to choose from, that's our freedom. That's a right to defend yourself. Is not something really that even the Constitution is granting. It's a God-given right, you know, and that's something that comes forth on my show, I think, every week. Do you agree?
Yes, I think it's what sets apart the United States from every other developed nation in the world. It is the foundation of our freedom. Without the Second Amendment, there'd be no First Amendment.
Right.
Without those two, there'd be no United States of America. So what I always think, an argument that often falls short is when people like to highlight that all these other countries may have they may not have Second Amendment rights like we have, but we're not seeking to emulate other countries. We are a very unique country. There's nothing else like us, and I will always fight to the death to protect my Second Amendment rights. And yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so now let's say you get to Congress, you know, you're in DC, and now you're confronted with all of these members that don't really want the Second Amendment. So they're basically saying it's the gun, you know, inanimate object, it's the fault. They don't want to put the blame on the actual culprits, you know, because crime and violence or gun violence is a crime. You know, it's not, you know, we're not telling people it's okay to go take your gun and shoot at whoever you want, right? So we don't do that. It's already a crime. And I'm all about accountability. You know, if you did the crime, you know, it's your fault. I don't care what you used. Doesn't matter. It's your fault. And I like to hold people accountable. And these people like to use scapegoats. You know, like the NRA. The NRA is the oldest civil rights organization in our country. The oldest civil rights organization in our country. They helped our country. They helped to this day train law enforcement, military. I mean, any NRA member that I know, we are people that are very responsible. We're not criminals. We don't do crimes. Okay, we're not going out and hurting people. We're extremely sophisticated and civilized, and we like our firearms. And we're sort of tired of being treated like, you know, some dumb hicks, you know, or just some toothless, overall wearing people, you know, with no brains or something. It's all a farce. You know, it's just not, it's unreal. It's just not true. Part of the reason why I started doing this program, and you're the 22nd episode, is because of that negative backlash, not just in the media, but also those voices in Congress that don't do us any good service. So my question to you, Dan, is what do you do? How do you persuade them to see it as freedom and to see it from our perspective?
What the anti-Second Amendment crowd likes to do is to capitalize upon your emotions, not your, but one's emotions, to take advantage of horrible situations. And what stands out to me is the left, I'm going to call it the left, they want to blame violence on the instrument as opposed to the human, as you just said. Look, we've had guns in this country since inception and before. Over 200, 300 years they've been here. And it's only in the very recent past that there's been an issue with all these horrible, horrible shootings. Nobody on the right wants shootings. Everybody on the right is identical to everybody on the left in that we would love to do everything we could to reduce gun violence. Now, from my point of view, that doesn't mean taking away guns. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. That has everything to do with enriching and strengthening the moral fabric of our society so that gun crime is reduced. But every American is 100% aligned on the desire to reduce, I've heard the word unnecessary, but the desire to reduce violence. Nobody's for violence. And we're just as much against violence and shootings as anybody else. But the left likes to paint it on an object instead of accepting responsibility. It actually doesn't surprise me because the left, the ethos of the left is normally there's no personal responsibility. They have rights, but they never have any responsibility or accountability. So this is in line with that. I think we have to be firm and have backbone and continue to tell our story, which is that the Second Amendment is part of the U.S. Constitution, which has kept this country safe and free and a beacon of hope in the world for hundreds of years. We don't need to alter it. The flaw in the system is that some humans are flawed, and sometimes people fall through the cracks, but it has nothing to do with the Constitution. But the left wants to blame the system instead of the real culprit, which is in every case whoever the perpetrator is. Right.
I like that. I like your answer.
Some people are not open to reason. There's a lot of people in political office, particularly at the federal level. They just want to stay. They just want to stay in power. So they respond to whoever makes the most noise. And this spring and summer, because of the horrific incidents that occurred in Florida at Portland, the people who wanted to restrict Second Amendment rights were making a lot of noise. So I think it does cause panic among lawmakers. I think it's not justified, but that's what the left always seeks to capitalize upon that. And I don't think it's right.
Me neither. And I think legislators, even on the, whether it be on the state level or the federal level, I think that when something tragic happens and emotions are flying, particularly like a school shooting, which is very emotional for a lot of Americans, I think they just need to take a step back. I'll be frank with you. I was pretty I live in Florida. I have kids. I was pretty emotional after the Parkland shooting. And my response was, arm every teacher. I might have a different emotional response than some of my counterparts, but I had an absolute emotional response. I want armed guards. I want police officers. I want to protect the schools like we protect the banks, like we protect the politicians, like we protect the movie stars. That was my reaction, and it was absolutely emotional. Okay, so after about 10 days, maybe. It took me a little bit, 10 days to 14 days. I really had to take a step back and be like, no, I really don't want police officers all over our schools. Okay, I don't want that. Mm-hmm. But when I was reacting on emotion, I went extreme. And I can admit that, okay? So I think whether it be on a state level or federal level, there's nothing wrong with taking a step back. And let's look at the evidence. Let's hear the pros. Let's hear the cons. Let's do what Congress is supposed to do, and that's debate and make decisions and have votes. And that shouldn't happen in a couple of days after a serious incident, because I think it makes for bad law.
I think you're right. I think that what you just referred to, we don't want uniformed police officers running around amok at schools.
Right.
What we want to do is we do want to push that decision down to the local level. So, for example, here in my district in Long Island, and by the way, it includes the northeast portion of Queens, so that's an important part of the district.
Oh, okay,
Here,
cool.
we have
like Douglaston?
Douglaston, Little Neck, Whitestone, Glen Oaks, not Bayside, but Whitestone. So it's kind of a weird shape. But
So you have a little bit of Queens and then Nassau County, which borders Queens County.
Top half of Nassau and then the top corner of Suffolk.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So what we want to do is push the decision with regards to having a hardened school defense to the local school districts. So here in Long Island, every school district right now are going through their process of deciding whether or not they want to have armed resource officers or not. And many of them are choosing, yes, many of them are choosing to have an armed officer in the school because, it's, in my view, it's the only way to protect your children. And as you cited, every other group is protected, every group. And you didn't include athletes. If you go to any of these big stadiums for a sporting event, those places have armed officers running around all over the place. Not only with police officer types, but also National Guard types with rifles and machine guns. Yeah, and that's the world that we live in. We can't. We wish we could eradicate evil, and it's almost as if the left is trying to pin the evil in the world on the Second Amendment. And I think it's got absolutely nothing to do with it. Humans have demonstrated the capacity for evil since they were created, unfortunately.
Yes, I think that's a very good argument. Evil exists, and we don't, gun owners, gun enthusiasts, Second Amendment enthusiasts, we don't want violence just as much as anybody.
No.
Not at all.
No, every gun owner I've met has been conscientious about the law, about the history of the law. I think that, the last thing we should seek to do is restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens on a wild goose chase to eradicate evil in the world. Look, we'd all love to eradicate evil, but taking away your rights and my rights has got nothing to do with that. It's not going to do it. People who have gone psychopathic or have decided for whatever reason they're going to kill, will seek to kill, regardless of whether or not we take your rights away or my rights away. So I don't see it as being a wise choice.
Exactly, I think so too. And I think that it's okay if you or someone.
Sure. One.
They grew up in the city, they weren't around firearms, they're, whatever it is. They weren't around firearms, they maybe not feel comfortable with firearms and so on. I don't mind if you don't get a firearm. That's okay with me. Yeah. I think it's the best way to protect yourself in case of danger, but if you don't want to buy a firearm, that's okay with me. I just don't want them to tell me how I should decide as a responsible adult, how I should decide how to protect myself. That's entirely my business. Right. And here in Florida, we have a high rate of, I think we're about 50%, we're concealed carry holders here in Florida. And you know what, that makes me feel really safe. So I can go to a public event, I can go to a place, an open place where there's a lot of people there, and I don't have to be carrying. I don't have to carry my firearm.
Right, other people are.
Because I know that somebody there is carrying. And even when you take the concealed carry course, or anytime I've been instructed, the instruction is always first it's about safety.
Yes.
It's about safety. It's about a mindset. So when you're carrying, you're not first of all you're more aware. You have to be aware of your surroundings. And then the other thing is that it's not about playing around, showing off, anything like that. This is a serious mechanism, and can be dangerous. Just like a 16-wheeler can be dangerous. If you get it behind a 16-wheel truck and you don't know how to drive it, you are a danger.
Right.
So it's the combination of things. Let me be who I am. If you decide you want, and believe me, a lot of people who don't like firearms and they go to the range, they absolutely love it afterward.
Yeah.
So first I would tell them, just go to the range and try it, just try it. They're like, wow, it's so great. But in the event you don't want to have firearms, I'm okay with that. Don't take it away from me, please.
Well, that's a great point. A lot of the people who want to restrict the Second Amendment are not familiar with firearms. They've never touched one. They've never shot one. They don't know how they operate. And I think education can go a long way.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
it really could. And you know, back in the day, I hear from other people and just through my research, you know, we didn't have this, like, you know, maybe not in New York City. We have a gun range in New York City and in the basement of the schools. And it was owned by the veterans at one time. Alan Twick, he's been on my show a couple of times. And he was telling me about that. And it was a place for shooters to go practice.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
there used to be
in the range.
gun clubs.
Students.
Yes.
And also I understand that, you know, there wasn't all these like restrictions, like even like high schoolers who live in the country and they have, you know, firearms or, you know, shotguns, whatever, and they got it in their truck and they drive to school and they park in the lot, and like nobody started shooting up anybody. I've been to like three gun rights policy conferences, huge crowds, 500, 600, 700 people. You'd have to imagine that most of the people there, you know, are armed. Like there's never been like a shootout at an NRA event, or there hasn't been a shootout at a gun rights policy conference event, which is coming up next weekend, by the way, in Chicago, if anybody wants to go. Oh, it's going to be too late. Oh, no, it's not, because we're going to air Wednesday. Okay. This Friday in Chicago, if anybody's interested, it's such a fabulous event. And what they do is it's free, okay? And you get to hear all of these awesome speakers about gun rights, and they give you a bunch of, I'm just going to grab one. I usually have it here. And they give out a bunch of free books all about guns and education. It's all really fantastic. And it's a really nice networking place to go. So I always want to boost the gun rights.
Raquel, I think it's important to talk about just how strict it is now, right? One of the words I hear from my opponent is he wants reasonable this and that. I also want reasonable restrictions on guns. Absolutely. And I think that we have them. In fact, I think in many cases they've gone way too far, such as the SAFE Act. But New York State, in particular, Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County, we already have background checks. And we have effectively waiting periods. It takes you as much as 18 months to get a handgun. And in many ways, I think that is a illegal restriction of your Second Amendment right, because it's effectively denying you the right by making you wait so long. But these rules are already very, very strict, and in my view, more than reasonable. But of course, I want reasonable rules on the Second Amendment.
You know what I've heard from people from Nassau County, what they dislike? It's the idea that in order for you to get a license for a firearm, you have to go through this criminal rigmarole. So with the background check, they call your employers. You know, I've heard people complain to me about these issues, that they treat, because you want to have a firearm, you're first treated like a criminal in order to get one, and I don't think that's reasonable. So they feel like, well, wait a second, I haven't done anything wrong. I just want to exercise my Second Amendment rights. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm following, you know, all of the rules. The federal rule is, I mean, you simply can't you can't sell a firearm without a license, and you can't buy a firearm without a background check. That's a federal law. Nothing has changed. That's still going on, and that's okay, right?
That's right.
And the other thing is that if you've been adjudicated by a federal law, 1968 gun control law, if you've been adjudicated by a judge as mentally incompetent, you also cannot purchase a firearm. Very, very. I've done a lot of interviews with the federally licensed firearm dealers. And they work really hard. You know, it's not easy. You know, they're not criminals either. They're just trying to run a business.
Right.
You know, buy and sell, you know, the product. It's not anything negative about them, but they have to go through all of these federal hurdles that do exist to protect us to the extent that we can be protected. And I think it certainly, it definitely goes far enough. But then now the states are able to work within these parameters, but instead of working within those parameters of the Gun Control Act, I think they go way above and beyond. The age restrictions, the ban on bump stocks. What do you think about all that? All those little, I call them incremental gun laws.
They are they're unconstitutional restriction on your Second Amendment rights, in my opinion. They do not achieve the goal of reducing gun violence. What they do achieve is they turn law-abiding citizens into criminals in many cases, because there's a complex web of rules on various accessories and things that a firearm can have, which have absolutely nothing to do with levels of violence and levels of illegal shootings. So I think that they're all just that they're an attempt to whittle away at Second Amendment rights, and they're ineffective in their in actually achieving anything.
Yeah, and they're ineffective. So we see, like, for example, we see a large amount of the school shootings occurring, not school shootings, mass shootings, let's say, occurring in gun-free zones.
Right.
It's like almost all of them. The majority of cases gun-free zones.
Of their attempt to legislate away, human violence. It's not going to happen. You see it in the UK, where since they banned guns, the murders just occur with knives or vehicles.
Right, because the criminal is going to behave criminally, and I like what you said, that gun control laws penalize law-abiding citizens. So what happens is that, I haven't done anything wrong. Somebody else did. They broke the law. Yeah. Somebody else broke the law, not me. I want you to hold them accountable for breaking the law and stop making more laws on me, because I haven't done anything.
They're trying
to restrict me.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating, Dan.
Well, I think that, the more we talk about it, the more we publicize it, the more people are willing to stand up for their views, the better off they will be. My district in particular, people are reasonable. People respect the Second Amendment, but you have a mix. Some people want to limit the Second Amendment. I think my opponent, I think his party, the Democratic Party, is moving in the direction of seeking to basically ban guns. They won't admit it, because they want to almost trick you into it over time. They use euphemisms and words that really don't mean anything. Reasonable. That doesn't mean anything. We all want reasonable, right? But then, so we need to push them to define it. What do you mean? What do you mean? And when you push them what they mean, well, what they really mean is they don't want there to be, they want to erase the Second Amendment. That's what they mean.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's a farce. And they get really, I've been confronted. If I wear, my NRA hat, my New York State Rifle and Pistol Association hat or shirt or anything, gun related, and I go into the public, I literally had people and I'm not bothering anybody, okay? I'm sitting down having lunch or dinner. I don't look like a criminal. I'm not a criminal, okay? I abide by the laws. I try my best. And these crazy people come up to me and they're like, "Do you think we don't watch our guns?" And I'm like, "Oh." Who are you? And they're attacking me.
People are pretty terrible, especially on the left, and I see it more often coming from the left. I rarely see people on the right attacking people on the left holding a different view. Most people on the right usually respect freedom of thought. If you want to think something different, that's fine. If you want to support Hillary Clinton, that's fine. People on the right don't get emotional about it and try and reverse the election. But people on the left, if you don't believe the right thing according to them, they will seek to shame you, change your mind by force, as opposed to persuasion. So it just shows that they're generally hypocrites.
I think so too, and they also do it by isolation. I have a really large family, and obviously we're going to fall on different political spectrums and so on. And I basically, I respect you. I respect it. I respect you want to, like you said, vote for Hillary Clinton. I don't mind having a discussion. I don't mind discussing with you why I disagree, and I don't mind listening to you about your points. But they always become belligerent.
Yeah.
And they become
there's no tolerance for.
They don't even know tolerance. So, and that really frustrates me, Dan. I'm glad you said that. Because that's the thing. They're preaching all the time. Tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. Oh, but if you have a conservative political persuasion, they cannot tolerate you.
No, they're hypocrites. It's an echo chamber. They all believe the same things, and there's very little diversity of thought on the left today. It's just sad. The entire party has moved so far to the left. Talk of abolishing ICE, maintaining open borders, and offering blanket amnesty to people who come here illegally.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because I know you told me that your wife was an immigrant.
Yeah.
And so you and my husband is too. So you and I aren't against immigration. I'm a first generation American. My father came from communist Cuba. He fought communism head on. He came to this country. He put a replica of the United States Constitution, a replica of a painting replica of the United States Constitution, framed it and put it on my wall in the living room.
I'm pro-immigration, as long as it's legal.
Yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, that's how I was raised. It was, my father he's deceased, but he had really heavy Cuban accent. So he'd say, "We live in America, we speak English." You kiss the ground you walk on. I'm like, okay, Dad.
That's how immigrants used to feel. Right now they come here, and remember, they're aliens. Now they come here and they want to know what their entitlements are and how much can they have. Gimme, gimme, gimme. It's very sad. It's been a complete about face.
I think so too. Why is it that the Democrats just want people to cut the line? They don't want them to follow the laws. They want them to go through desert and jungles and just come into the America with not a penny in your pocket, and then go to the welfare office, go somewhere, and then everybody's shoveling, giving you cash, giving you money, setting you up in a home and so on, paying for your kids' college. You and I talked about this over the phone. I went to college. I had to get student loans. I had to pay them off. It took me many years to do that. Nobody gave me a free ride.
No, it's just a different mentality. I think the reason the Democrats do it is they want to create instant voters, and they want to create a culture of dependency. So they want to hand things out to people to make them dependent on the handouts. So they lose their spirit and their zest to create a life for themselves on their own. It's a very negative cycle, because when you hand something to an immigrant, they get used to that, and what they should have been contributing to the United States will never get produced, because they become a ward of the state, basically independent of the state. And the Democrats do, because they want to get the votes. They want to get the votes.
And their children become dependent on the state and the grandchildren, so it becomes a vicious cycle that they never get out of.
No, they don't.
So you're really only living, mouth to hand, week to week. I mean, it's you never actually, improve yourself or improve the next generation, because they fall right into that trap of dependency, and that's what it is. So once you become dependent on the state, well, you're going to need those Democrats to keep pushing that welfare state
for free stuff for you.
You could keep getting your free stuff. Yeah. It's really unfortunate, because I don't want to eliminate welfare. I don't. I think that people need it. I think that most people on welfare are women and children. That's the truth. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that, maybe she's a widow. Maybe, you're falling on hard times. Maybe you just recently got divorced and you need a little help. But the idea is that it has to go, and I don't mind giving. I don't mind giving to help. I do not. But what I do mind is that it's not that anymore. This is, come on over here, come on, let me give you some food, let me give you the money in the house and the stuff and the cars and the voting rights and car and driver's license. Oh, don't worry, you don't have to be a citizen. No, you just have to vote Democrats. It's just,
That's their method of operation. It's very sad, but they'll do anything to get power, to stay in power. And then, it just shows that their interests are really not the interest of society as a whole. The interests are just for their party to remain in power. Because we all know that these kind of policies, they're not sustainable. They're not going to end well.
Yeah. I want to say too, when my dad first came to this country, he he gained political asylum from JFK. And he was a PhD at that time when he came to this country. His PhD in philosophy and fine arts. Very intelligent man in his own language. He didn't speak English yet. So what did my dad do? Well, he started washing dishes. He was a dishwasher.
That's what you have to do.
Dishwasher until he could learn the language. And then, then he learned English. Then he got to know English, and then he could pursue, better employment and bigger dreams. And my mom came from Puerto Rico, although, she's American. She came here from Puerto Rico when she was 18, but she came with money. She came with money that she saved. Mm-hmm. And she bought a coffee shop in Upper Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
And my parents always worked. I never knew anything different than working. They lived the American dream. They both became very successful. And they never collected welfare, ever. I never saw them collect welfare.
That's
and
impressive.
I just want to tell you one more little personal story, if you don't mind, Dan. When I was a young bride, I was a young mother, and I was divorced by the age of 25 years old. And I had to make a decision what to do. So my parents are like, move home. Come on, we'll take care of you. I had 2 kids. Come on. And I'm like, oh, heck no, I don't want to go home. I've been out of the house since I'm 17. I'm not coming home. Stop asking me, No, I wasn't going to come home. I'm so dead serious about this, Dan. Welfare didn't even cross my mind.
Right.
I didn't even think of it. I didn't even know it was like an option. I didn't even know. So I, got 3 jobs. I worked 3 jobs until I graduated from St. John's University. And then I started working for lawyers in Manhattan as a legal secretary. And I did that for 10 years. And I did very, very well. I made a good salary. I supported myself. I didn't need any handouts and so on. And I'm like I said a little bit earlier, it's needed, and I don't mind helping, and sometimes it's needed. It's that abuse that's taking advantage of, and then them in this cycle of poverty. When I didn't even know it was there, and maybe I was better off. Okay, so maybe if I knew that I had this option of going on welfare, maybe I would have taken it. But it just didn't even cross my mind. And I worked. And I just did I worked as a waitress, I worked as a tutor, and I worked as a secretary at a contracting company. And I did that for 1 year. Was it easy? No. But you know what, Dan, at the end of the week, when I got my paycheck, and I paid my little bills that I had, my rent, my electric, I felt good about myself.
It's nice to create independence. That's how you become independent. You become a good citizen by paying your own way. So yeah, I think that's great.
It's, that's the American way, but that was like taught. I learned by my parents' example. I learned by their example that even though they were restricted at first because of language. My mother had a really Spanish-sounding first name. I'm not going to repeat it, even though she's deceased. She would never let me hear the end of it. But she felt discriminated against because of her first name, and she ended up having it legally changed.
Wow.
And everybody knew her as Ellen. And I guess she felt more part of the crowd, and she wanted to be, she wanted to assimilate. My parents wanted to assimilate.
We need that. That's the way the system is designed. For when people come, they're supposed to assimilate.
Yeah.
And where a lot of problems arise is when we have these new ethnic groups coming over and they choose not to assimilate. That's not good for anybody.
No, and it keeps them down because they don't learn the language. And what do? They clean houses for a living. They mow lawns.
Yeah.
Right. It's really unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. And the other thing is that, they have to be mainstreamed. The kids that come that are preferably immigrants, legal immigrants. When you mainstream them, they learn English. They learn English really fast.
As they should.
Yeah, as they should. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about your opinion about the president, the U.S. Senate confirmation hearing that's been going on with Brett Kavanaugh. who I really like, by the way. And we're almost at the end. So I want your opinion. And what's like the dynamic in your congressional district right now with respect to people like Trump? Do they hate Trump? Do they is there a good conservative vibe going on? Like, what's happening there?
There's definitely Trump has a strong base of support.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's present. They're vocal. Overall, I think the district is mixed. It's probably around 50-50. Although Clinton won the election here by over 5 points. When I go around and I talk to people, I would say that it's about half of them are probably going to vote for him, and half of them are not. Remember, this is New York, which is one of the most democratic states. Yeah. So I think that's not going to get in the way of his victory in 2020. But people are mixed, like the rest of the country. There's always that subgroup of people who don't want to hear any reason, don't want logic. They just some kind of knee-jerk reaction because they just wanted Hillary to win. He was never supposed to win, so they're never going to like him. But it's very mixed. There's for every bad person I meet maybe one plus a little bit of change, or somebody who understands what the president is doing, why it's in the interest of the American worker and the interest of the American middle class. A lot of people who get hysterical about Trump, they don't even want to get to those facts. They just jump to some of these emotion-inducing issues like immigration issue, the border wall. There's often not a reasoned discussion with some of these people who are never Trumpers and just hate the president. So sometimes there's just nothing you can do with these people. They have their mind is made up and they don't want to hear any facts that might change that mind.
So you're reaching out to everybody else, I imagine, in your race.
Well, look, I reach out to everybody, and then until somebody is kind of makes it clear that they don't really want to talk or they're not open to a discussion, then I'll let go. But if they want to have a discussion, I'm more than happy to engage on issues: the economy, and the economy. Because a lot of our
it really is that important.
It is, because a lot of our problems in society are driven by financial stress, crime, drug abuse, broken families. These are often driven by financial distress. So I think not the only issue, but the issue we spend the most time on is figuring out how to strengthen and empower men and women and families so they can pursue their American dream and not be forced to rely on welfare, not be forced to rely on Medicare or Medicaid. Right. It's nobody's first choice. People would prefer to have a good paying job that provides benefits. In the absence of that, then they may have to rely on the state. But that's not. I think that's very few people will choose that as their first choice.
I think so too. I think everybody wants an opportunity.
They do.
Like you said, and the opportunities open up with a good economy.
Absolutely. Financial comfort is so important. The ability to pay your bills will reduce your stress level. If you have kids who are school-age kids, and every day you come home and you don't know if you're going to be able to pay the electricity bill that month, it can cause some tenseness and some stress in the family. And it's really sad that has to happen, but it does. So whatever we can do to empower people to make more money and to reduce the cost of living or cut taxes, it'll accrue to society's benefit.
I agree with you 100%. Well, you have my support. If I was living in that district, I'd definitely vote for you.
Thank you.
I call on all my friends from Long Island in Nassau County and part of Queens. I have a lot of friends there.
We're making a lot of progress.
I'm going to be promoting you on my
day. And I think we're going to win this race.
How's it going on? Like, you feeling good about it?
Look, the message is really well received. When people spend more than 5 or 10 seconds with me, they instantly realize I'm doing this for the right reasons. I have very specific goals in mind, and I'm not doing it because I want the power, the prestige, like my opponent. Everybody knows he's a career politician. Everybody knows that he would say anything to be reelected. And I think when they hear me talk, it's a breath of fresh air. Brand new politics. I have very specific ideas of where I think we can change, and I want to do it for 8 years and then get out. I'm not looking to spend a lifetime. I don't view politics as a career. It's a public service for a portion of your adult working life, and then you go back to being productive for the private sector.
Sounds like a good plan. I hope Nassau needs you. I really do. I hope so.
They do. This program, Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole country needs representatives like you.
We need more veterans. We need more people who are not beholden to special interests. People who don't take money from corporations. because it just fouls the atmosphere. You know, you find yourself being forced to choose between the people who pay for your campaigns and the people you were elected to serve, and you can't have that. That's why I don't take corporate money. I think it's bribe. I don't see how anybody can take corporate money and then pretend that they're objective when it comes time to deal with this corporation.
Very, very nice. That's a really good standard. I think the American people love that standard. Dems, Repubs, both of us, we're sick of the corporate influence. You know, so they pay money. You know, they donate rather. They donate to the campaigns, and then the campaigns have to. Then the elected officials make laws that help the corporations, because that's the payback. That's the quid pro quo. The fact that you don't take funding from them, that's really, really incredible. I'm so very pleased. I wish we had people like you all over New York, because we desperately need it, particularly there, but not just there, really across America. So we are getting down to the bottom of the hour. Every time I have a really good show, it goes. It goes
fast. I know. That's the way it is.
I'd like you to have the last word.
Sure. I'm Dan Debono. I'm running in the 3rd District of New York, which is the North Shore of Long Island, including parts of Northwest Suffolk, town of Huntington, Kings Park, the top half of Nassau County, and Northeast Queens. I'm an outsider. I'm brand new to politics. I'm not a career politician. My focus is strengthening the middle-class economy. You can find me on the internet. I have an active Twitter account. It's Dan Debono. And I'm also active on Facebook at Debono for Congress. And I have a website located at dandebono.com. And if you find your way to one of my outlets there, you can contact me through the email system or the chat. And I always respond. I like to talk to people, hear what their ideas are, because I recognize no individual has a lock on good ideas. And I'm always open to hearing ideas from you and from many of my constituents. So thanks for having me on, and it's been my honor.
That's just great. Thank you so much for that ending, and thank you for opening it up for people to contact you. And that's important, because a lot of times I contact elected officials and they don't always get back to me, and I kind of have to get right in their face to get like any talking time. But the idea that you're available to people is really, really fantastic. So one last thing we're going to do before we hang up. You have to wave. It's a tradition. At the same time. Ready? Bye. Okay. Bye. Same time.
Okay.
Okay.